Welcome to Iris After Hours.
Casual conversations with inspirational speakers off the clock.
G'day, welcome back to Iris After Hours. Now today we have a really amazing special guest. He is our pastor. He's a local LA guy. He has written a ton of books, I'm not sure how many, but...
so many books.
So many books. He is a host and he's an amazing speaker, and he's got this crazy prophetic gifting where he hears from God for other people, and it's really awesome. Here we have Shawn Bolz.
Well, hello. Hi, guys.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for
Glad to
coming
be
in,
here.
Shawn.
It's the easiest gig ever. I just walk across the hallway.
Come on.
I know, isn't that great? No commuting.
Yeah, no commuting.
I would ask how the drive was over here since it's LA.
It was a mile.
But
it was great.
That's awesome.
Come on.
For those who don't know you, can you tell us what your life looks like currently for
Wow.
you and Sherry? For those of you.
Well, we just gave over the senior pastoring over to Juanatan and Jennifer, our best friends. And so we're still in the founding team. We meet with them every week, of course. And but we are planting Bolz Ministries, which is also a production house. We're producing more written materials, and then we're going to be doing a TV show next year. It's part of our dream projects for years.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. It's
How
an
many
interview
books
show.
have you actually written, Shawn?
Just 5.
Yeah.
Just,
Not, well,
just
I mean,
that is a
five.
lot.
Look, I'm working on my first, so it's like just 5. It's like
I know. Well, they're not all they're not my passion projects necessarily. So we're translating God. The rest of them are just like things. That
Translating God's your latest book.
My latest book.
Yeah.
And so the
Can
other
you
ones
tell
are,
us a little bit about that one?
Sure. Yeah, it's about hearing God's voice for you and then the world around you. That's the subtitle too.
But just to qualify for people who maybe don't know what prophetic is, would what you said then, would that be a good description of what the prophetic is? Hearing God's voice for you and for those
just
around
like
you?
learning how to like really walk with God and really commune with His nature. Like, what is His love nature, and how do I get led by that?
Yeah.
So it's not just about like hearing a voice and the gift of prophecy. It's about actually the prophetic is a culture of your heart before it's a gift. So we go through that in the book of just like how do you actually develop seeing people the way God originally designed and destined them to be, because that's how we as Christians are supposed to see people. That's how Jesus saw everybody.
Through eyes of love.
Through eyes of love, and like what do they look like in their fullness? And when Jesus said in John 10:10, I came to bring you like life and life abundantly. How do we see people in that version of life, and then like give them opportunity to grow into that? So the book's all about that, but it also goes into the prophetic and how to develop that as a ministry in your community, or develop the gift of prophecy as well.
Yeah.
But it starts out like super philosophical and love based, and then just goes into how to build out of that place. So that's the most current book. We're doing it for kids too. So we're doing Growing Up with God for Kids, and it's a Translating God for Kids series.
Come
8 to
on.
12-year-olds first. So that's what'll be out in October of
I know, I'm so
2016.
My boy's
No,
4.
it'll
He
come.
can't come.
Believe me,
Come
because
on.
my kids are similar ages as yours. So we'll do little kids too, and then we're just doing a lot of materials. So that's about 1/3 of our ministry is about the prophetic and life coaching people in the prophetic and spiritual advising, different business leaders and political leaders and stuff. And another third is actually like working towards entertainment industry and like working on building kind of the glue between relational networks who are involved as Christians, impacting the arena that's not the faith-based arena, but like the actual, whether they're sports stars or whether they're video game makers or film and television people. There's already a faith-based community that's very self-supportive, and they're it's, the church likes them really well. But as far as outside of them, it's like to be a Christian athlete, unless you're a football player, which are the most prolific Christian athletes, or basketball players. It's pretty unchurched, and so the people who are standing for Jesus are like, they're very alone, or they're working 70, 80 hours a week. It's hard to get to local church. Sunday's a big game day for most sports. So just like building networks of relationship and unity and community amongst sports industries and entertainment industries together, and then the other third of our energy we're spending on media now. That's new because it was the church, and now we're spending on media. Nice. And so we're going to be doing a TV show next year called something like Grow. We're just helping. There's hardly any Christian television shows that are about growing people up. So I think like when you get one of these athletes or a billionaire or somebody that we're connected to, and they share like what was the tipping point, or how did you get to the next level of whatever it is, and you hear their life story when it involves actually relationships and powerful personal choices and all that stuff. Before you actually have the breakthrough, you have this series of events that happen because their choice is the process. Yeah. And that process is worth 1,000 sermons.
Yeah.
And there's no one who's putting that on display in a wide way. So Sheree and I are going to be interviewing people and like pulling them out And we already hear the best stories in the world, so we want to display those stories to the rest of the world. And Christians, I think, need a show like that to grow, because they have Joyce Myers and Joel Olsen and people who are amazing at teaching.
Yep.
But then you need the life application, and we want to show it in real life. How is this working for somebody who came from nothing to something, or somebody who came in an industry that they weren't actually qualified for, but then God showed up and said, "I'm sending you here, and here's where they're at now." And so, like, showing that, I think, is going to be worth so much to people. It's going to be so invaluable. So that's what we're working on next year, 2017.
So not that much. We're not that
We're not
busy.
ambitious. We're
Quiet.
Yeah.
We're super quiet.
A lot of space, a lot of downtime.
Yeah, that's
And
what
we have
it's
our
like.
two daughters, and they
Just
do
raising
see
a
me. It's
family.
good. Yeah, raising a family. They're
And
awesome.
how are people going to be able to hear or see that show?
We're working on that. So bolzministries.com is our portal for all things that we're doing.
Awesome.
So like they can just go to Bolz Ministries and they'll find out more and more. They'll find out real
That's a
time with
website?
us. It's a website.
Yeah.
bolzministries.com.
And it's spelled with a W.
No.
No?
BOLZ.
What?
I'll be as it.
Ministries.
I thought there was a W. Oh no, it's Sean. No,
Sean.
no, it's funny
there's no W in my last name.
when I first, because I've never,
So sorry. We
You've
didn't
never
do
seen
our
a Sean with a
research.
W?
I've never. It's the W in the Sean. Yeah, because
that's the
usually
real way
Sean.
to spell it.
I've got the Irish spelling is SEAN for Sean, and then the only other one I knew was the SHAUN.
Yeah, that's the very
And then you're
European
my first
one, yeah.
W, but then since I've come to America, because I'm Australian
That's the real
originally,
way to spell it. That's
even
the
though I'm
real
an
way.
American citizen now, the W, I know a lot of W Seans in
Yeah,
America. It's the
that's
American way. So sorry, that's where the W comes in.
So bolzministries.com, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, awesome. So,
Can you
Sean,
just-
obviously, process is huge, and
Yeah.
what are you talking about that you want to help people with is the process of walking out their faith, walking that in their life, and applying the principles. So, tell us about your story. How did it start from a kid? Your God.
Yeah.
You don't have to give us the whole thing, but I'm just curious to know.
We have 16 hours. Of
This is actually a series.
So, just briefly,
Briefly.
you started out with John
Christian
Wimber.
family. Yeah,
Christian family. Your
my
mum and dad.
they got saved. My brother died of leukemia.
Gosh,
And it was
when?
really sad. He was 4 years before I was born.
Before you were born.
And my parents were not really awakened to God. They were kind of Catholic, but kind of not.
And they went through losing a child.
And they
their
lost
firstborn.
him, and an angel showed up in the hospital room. And they didn't know at the time. It was just a woman who had, was overdressed. She was, dressed in, almost like a ball gown, and they both saw it a different color. And she was comforting my mom. They both stopped crying immediately. She said to who to ask about Jesus, their priest, to ask him about Jesus, and that guy, my brother, was now with Jesus, and this whole thing. So they had this dramatic experience, and then when they went away, they were just both so confused because they weren't crying anymore, and they had, some level of supernatural healing of their grief, but, they're still in grief. And they went to their priest, and their priest said that was an angel, and obviously...
The priest said that
yeah,
was
he's
an
like, how
angel.
could it not be? Is there any sense for how she got into that part of the hospital, or how she got to you, or, how you calmed down? And then said, you need to know Jesus, and led them through, asking Jesus into their heart. So he led them through salvation. So he was leading a charismatic Catholic healing
You've got a
group.
lot of Catholic priests, mate.
Oh, come on. And he was leading a healing group. He believed in the supernatural. And so their first experience as
the
Christians...
the priest was.
Yeah, it was to, hang out with all these Catholics who were going after healing. And so my sister, Cindy, was about, I think, 8 then. And she got saved through that group. And then started
gosh.
prophesying and praying for people for healing when she was 8, 9 years old. And it just had some
At the
cool
Catholic
God
church.
accounts.
At the Catholic
church.
Oh,
my
my
dad was in the Air
God.
Force. They got transferred to California.
What year are we talking?
19. Well, they got transferred to California in 1974, 75, right after I was born.
Wow.
So, so they couldn't have more children. My mom got healed and was able to have Jennifer
She
and I.
couldn't have children,
And
so
she had endometriosis, and so they experienced healing. They experienced the supernatural. They were praying.
Oh, how
for.
beautiful
So,
is that? Because they lost a son, and then
yeah,
she
then
couldn't
they
have any more.
And she had a
got
daughter
healed,
and a
had
son. They
another-
weren't going to have any more after Cindy and
my
Guy. So
gosh.
it was cool that they had 2 more as part
How
of
good
their
is God?
God journey. And my dad, they were really desperate when they moved to California because they couldn't find anyone who believed in what they believed in. And so, especially in the Catholic Church, was
Right, because they left that. What
non-charismatic.
city were we in, the Catholic Church?
It was in the, I can't
Back
remember.
east
I think it was in
somewhere.
Alabama, actually.
Okay.
But
So they left
I
that
stayed in
group.
California my whole life. My parents.
So you were born in California.
No, I was born in Ohio, but I was there for 2 months. So
Okay.
we never came out to California right away.
I didn't
But
realize
was
you
in-
were such a Californian.
I love California. So my
Raised.
parents, my dad was born in California, and my sisters were born in California because
Whereabouts?
they kept coming back here. They get orders. My dad was in Stockton, and
Stockton.
Cindy was in, I don't know, Sacramento, I think, and then my brother Guy was in Lancaster, and I can't remember where Jennifer was born. It was somewhere in there. So it was just all over California because the Air Force bases, wherever they are, they were, wherever they were stationed, and they would just try and stay here because they liked it so much. And so when my dad we were in Yorba Linda, That's where they got stationed in kind of a civilian base.
Oh, yeah, I know that Air Force Base up there. We drive past it going to Collins Lake.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the one.
So no, it's in Orange County. Sorry, it's in
Oh,
Orange County.
okay.
But next to Anaheim. And my dad was at a grocery store, and he was just praying, crying out to God, just like, give us community here, give us a family here. And he's in the produce section, and he hears two men talking about physical healing who are shopping. And they're talking about radical healings. Like, and then Jesus healed this person. My dad was so nervous because he's like, what if they're a cult, or what if they're, And he goes, are you guys talking as Christians about how God heals people? And they're like, yes. And I said, I've been looking for people like you. And he just tells them his story a little bit.
What are the
And
chances
one of the
of that
men
happening?
goes, you need to come to my home group. I'm starting next week. And it's John Wimber. And it was his first home group.
Oh, my
So
No.
my mom and dad
goodness.
go to the home group, which
In a supermarket.
which
Orange
was
County.
a Calvary Chapel based home group that then they broke off to start the Vineyard, which was at Yorba Linda High School. My sister Cindy did a sit-in so they could even have the space there because the principals in the school district superintendent wasn't going to let them have the church there. And then Cindy got it she got like 75
Social
kids in the school
justice.
saved and did a sit-in so they could do it. And
Wow.
then that's where we met for the first season of the Vineyard.
For context, can
That
you
was
tell
crazy.
people quickly who John Wimber is?
So John Wimber was the leader of the charismatic movement of the 80s. One of the main leaders, probably
Yep.
one of the main 5 leaders. And he went to Fuller Seminary and he had this theological background, but he was a Righteous Brother beforehand. So he was part of the singing band Righteous Brothers and wrote songs like Tequila and sold them.
No, I did not know that.
So he was a
The
producer
Righteous
and he was
Brothers
a
are fa-
manager.
He was part of the Righteous
Oh yeah,
Brothers.
and he was a manager
bit
of
excited.
musicians. So
Chris, you got to listen to it.
like he was even
They're
asked to
awesome.
be the manager of the Beatles in the 80s, like to help them move into a new
Whoa.
zone. And he didn't see that as a spiritual occupation at the time because the theology was so different back then. But so he when he got saved, he wanted to see, they did some Come Holy Spirit type meetings. He wanted to see God move in a powerful way in the entire church. The thing that John Wimber did for us that was interesting, that was birthed in that kind of movement, was that he didn't have he did have a theology degree, but none of his guys that he raised up had a theology degree. And they started a worldwide church planting movement called the Vineyard.
Yep.
And so most of the people who were in the Vineyard they wouldn't build churches, they would just move into a strip mall. So instead of spending all their budget on building a church and building a membership base,
What's a strip mall?
they'd move into like a strip mall was like like the stores
A bunch
all
of
in a
stores
row.
in a row.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
they'd move into like strip malls. It was called the strip mall church
Yeah.
movement. They would just move into a strip mall and just start gathering people together and say like, let's just worship. And then after we worship, we'll teach. And they were a lot of times terrible teachers, but they had good worship teams. And no one believed, for the most part, 80-90% of Christian churches didn't even believe in having drums in their church in the beginning of the 80s. And
Yeah,
John Wimber
exactly, yeah.
said, I'm a musician. You have to have like a full worship experience. And he brought drums in, and he led worship too. And he
so that was the
gifted.
change.
Wow.
It changed the entire church map as far as what worship looked like. So they started the Vineyard Music Label, which was the leading worship of
It
the
was.
church. in
I
the
remember
80s.
as a kid.
Whether you were
Lots of the songs were
evangelical
Vineyard
or
songs
super
that you were singing.
Pentecostal,
Yeah.
Yep.
that's what people. So we came out of that movement. We were only there for about 4 or 5 years, and then I was growing up. But they didn't have a lot for children because John didn't have his kids were older. He didn't have a lot of emphasis on children at that time in the first initial
Right.
move. We got transferred to Santa Maria, which is by Santa Barbara, kind of the other Iris base is up over there. We got transferred there, and we had
That's a real low socioeconomic area, hey, Santa Maria.
and at the time it was a little bit better. There's a little village on the way called Lompoc Village. There's Lompoc Village, then Santa Maria. And Lompoc Village had a school called Cabrillo in it. And that school, my sister and I went to the junior high, she went to high school. And that school had a weird move of God through a Baptist church where we saw 700 or 800 of the kids get saved. There's only 870 kids. So I
the
led
whole school.
250 people to the Lord who were in high school when I was in junior high myself.
How old were you?
13. And it happened over
Wow.
about 9 or 10 months. And
So just tell me what's going on at 13 with you and God.
it was really strange because my parents were having these home groups on base where they'd have 250 airmen gathered in like the officers club, and they were just discipling all these people. They just loved everybody. They were everyone's mom and dad, but they weren't traditional pastors. So they had no ego in it. And they had no politics in it. They were just like helping these guys through their life. And then we had no church to go to that was charismatic that they could function. Their church was bigger. Their home group was bigger than most churches in the area.
Wow.
So we went to a Baptist church that just had really good theology, and so we went there and. The youth pastor was he just had about a 2-year window where he was a hot mess. He was like someone's relative or something that I don't know. But he just had a gift of evangelism in his life, but he didn't have the gifts, the supernatural gifts.
Okay.
And so my parents were teaching that their whole home group is about like the love of God and supernatural gifts of God and whatever. So they were teaching prophecy and healing. So we joined the youth group, and just I was leading people to the Lord all the time. Just by it was so easy. I'd sit down next to someone on the bench, and they'd be like, "Hi," and I'd be like, "How are you?" And they're like, "I'm having a hard time because I'm meeting my dad again, who molested me when I was, this is like a 14-year-old who molested me 2 years ago." And the social workers and I'm like 13 years old, trying to figure out what to do with that. They're like, "Can I pray with you? I'm a Christian." They get saved. And it happened all the time. It was like people would pour out the gut of guts, But I had this capacity where I had grace. I wasn't oppressed by it. I wasn't sad. I would just see God move. And so I had about 250 people saved that year. And so Jennifer and my sister and I we're very close in age. We were like, this is how it should be. It's just revival is what it is. We didn't know this wasn't happening everywhere because that was our exposure.
Of course,
so hearing God's voice,
this is normal, and this is happening everywhere around the world.
We had discipleship groups. My mom would like take a group of our friends that every 10 weeks we have a new group at our house who was like, getting discipled and mentored. My mom would take them all through inner healing because she's just such a mom. And so we had to move to Sacramento because my dad got restationed, and when we moved there, it was really a hard time because that youth group fell apart because the youth pastor fell away from God in 2 years. It was just crazy. And, all this fruit, but he didn't really have the character to maintain it. And so then 9 of the people also died at the same time. So I went through kind of a dark night at 15, and it was a really defining time where I just went, I've grown up in the church. I've seen you move in church. It's really powerful. I've seen you now bring revival that made a church bigger. But I feel like you want to touch all culture. I feel like you want to use entertainment industry and business and all these places that feel like we have to go out to them. They're all coming to us, but we have to go out to them. And I decided I wanted to be like a missionary, but not like a missionary to like necessarily Africa, although that was part of my dream. I wanted to go into an industry and see what I saw in the church through the vineyard and through this youth group. Yeah. I wanted to see it happen in an industry, and I love the entertainment industry, so I started to be
So you've been passionate about the entertainment industry for a long time.
Oh yeah, since I was like 15. Wow. I was like, if I'm going to see, I had this gift of life, all my friends just died, it felt like. I have this gift of life, and I'm going to use it to see you manifest who you are in your real nature, your love nature, to the world around me where they don't have to come to me or come into the fishbowl of the church. I want to go out. And my parents were super excited because they were first generation Christians. So they were super excited when the church would experience more of God. Yeah. That was glory to them. That was the best. They were like, this is it. We're in heaven. And I'm like, but what about everybody else? There's billions of people. Like I would get so sad. Like, this is cool. I'd go to a church meeting where everyone's falling down. Wow. I never fell down, but everyone was falling down.
So even in the midst of all this amazing stuff, God was placing a vision in you to bring it up and out, to spread it.
And so in high school, our youth pastor, we were in a vineyard church in Sacramento, and the youth pastor kind of had a hard time. So he went away really fast. And the pastor of the church came to one of the new believers. We had a couple hundred people who had got saved through youth group. So he came to one of the new believers who was 27, the youth that got saved, and to me and said, you're too young in the Lord to lead the youth group. You're too young as a person to lead the youth group. Wow. Why don't you do it together? So we led this youth group and just saw just hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of kids in Sacramento get saved. But what we'd ask God, where are you right now? Where do you want to go, Holy Spirit? And he'd say, go after group homes. We didn't know what group homes were. So we'd go, we went after a teen pregnancy crisis group home. And then we went after a bipolar boy group home and got them all saved and brought them all to youth group. And all the Christian homeschool parents took all their kids out of our youth group because it was so crazy, dysfunctional and crazy. We had gang members. It was just great. We did concerts and all this stuff. So I think I learned from...
How old were you now?
17 and 18, and so we were we led probably through our concerts alone, we led 1,000 or 1,400 people to the Lord, and then we had so many more come just in different ways. So you
said you were asking God what to do and where to go. Was that when you were first experiencing what you feel like the prophetic was?
When I was first leading in ministry, I didn't know a life without the prophetic. So to me, but I didn't see it as prophets because we never knew any prophets.
No, it was just...
So the Vineyard movement, there was no prophets.
It was just your normal
There was Paul Cain and Bob Jones, but they were so rare. It was we just thought that's how you lead. You just ask God where to go and what to do, and you stay as relationally as connected as possible. And
it is a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? If that's working...
But we could see, even in our church that I belong to there that doesn't exist anymore, we could see the dysfunction where people had put ministry in front of relationship, and we could see all of that really clearly. Our whole family, my mom and dad would process it and say, look, the pastor is railroading his kids for his ministry. You understand that, right? Yeah, we understand that. My dad's look at me, I'm a colonel in the Air Force, I still have time for you, right? You can't do what they're doing. If you're going to do any kind of significance in life, whether you have a career or ministry, love your family, love your friends first. So my parents were mentoring us and discipling us the whole time because I was a performance workaholic by 17. I was in football, I was in choir, I was in
you played
journalism,
football?
I was in all kinds. But I had a brain bruise that year, so I didn't get to play anymore. But I was youth pastor. I was writing poetry. I was in musical theater. I was doing all of that.
So
My mom and dad would sit
changed.
down with me and go, "This is unhealthy. We're going to draw boundaries with you." I'm like, "No, I have to do it. God's call." I had such a Messiah complex. Like, I have to, and they would just like mentor me and like just tell me like, "Wait, you're going too fast. You're running past your grace." So it's good to have parents like that. We don't all have that, right? That's why we're
Do you have to remind yourself of that now?
No, I feel like
do your parents still speak into your
You
life?
guys know my
You're
life.
doing too much, Shawn.
Cherie is amazing. Cherie's like, I love boundaries,
your
and I
wife's
like
like?
when we're healthy.
Yeah.
So like, if we start to go too far out, she's like, I told you, and not like I told you so, but like, how are we going to rebalance this now? So she does that constantly. So we do have push seasons, but we don't push lifestyle. So we'll push like really hard for like 2 months, but we have to.
I need to remember that.
10 months.
That's what I need to know in my life. There's push
Yeah.
season. There's
Yeah.
push seasons and there's push lifestyle.
Yeah.
Keep it to the push seasons, so
Good.
it's not your lifestyle.
But that's what I learned when I was
just
in high
someone
school.
listening, that's great
I almost
advice.
I went to third world countries until I went to Kansas City after that. Some of you guys know I went to Kansas City. Kansas City
Yeah.
was a place where the prophets were, and I didn't want to go there. God asked me when I had a full ride musical theater scholarship for the first time to college here down in Southern California that they'd ever given one. Everything. And my parents were so proud and excited, and God spoke to me and said, "Go to Kansas City." I'd never been there. I didn't know Mike Bickle. I didn't know the whole thing. I was exhausted by it.
Had you heard of the Kansas City
I'd heard we had a
prophets?
few of the people come through, like and even Bob Jones came to our church in the vineyard, but I hadn't really been exposed to him, and I wasn't super impressed with like the culture of what I heard about that. It felt like an Assemblies of God church to me. Not that Assemblies of God is bad, but I was such in a free zone of where we just didn't have a hierarchy. So
Yeah.
even looking at like they do like their version of podcasts, they'd send out a monthly CD, and I was getting it and going, I don't like this church culture. I don't think it's very relational. I don't know if I'm going to go there. But I feel like God said, I'm going to teach you about who you are out there, so I want you to go. So I
This
gave
is
up my
living in
scholarship
Sacramento?
from Sacramento, and I moved to Kansas City.
Okay.
And in that context,
How old were you here now?
19.
19. Okay.
And I waited from the time I was 18 to 19 to go. And when I got out there, I mean, there was all these ministries that had just failed in gross immorality at that church. It was a 7,000 member church. Mike Bickle led it. It was a wonderful church, but it was also in a season where two of their biggest fathers had just failed in some pretty bad immoral ways, and the church was pretty devastated. So they were exhausted, and it was prophetic fathers. So some of the prophetic stuff, John Wimber had just taken on the Kansas City movement under the vineyard.
Okay.
And so it happened right when I was getting there. And had said, you need to lay low as a church movement towards the prophetic, get all your prophetic people off staff, have teachers and pastors on staff like normal churches, and just be healthy. Well, when I got there, like it just felt like this, almost like they took all the advice too far, and it got political and weird. So I got there, I'm like, oh no, I'm not coming here to live, and I've given up so much to come here. No, I'm gonna.
and
these people, and so everyone's like, I don't know if we should prophesy or not, and it was built around personalities, not around like relationship.
Yeah.
So I was leading right when I got there, I was leading a Bible study that this one of the prophet's sisters. The prophet had left for 3 months to go somewhere, and the prophet's sister had taken it over. And the people were like such awesome people, but I said, how does this prayer group normally go? You guys, this is weird, this discipleship prayer group. Well, my brother tells us what to pray about, and then we pray about it for 2 hours. I'm like, that sounds really boring. What is God telling you? I don't know. So I taught these people who had been praying together for 18 years. I taught them how to pray with their own revelation.
Because that was your normal
They're
MO.
all in their 50s.
And
I'm
that's your
like,
normal
why don't you
MO,
know how to
isn't
hear
it?
from God for yourself? Why are you living vicariously through someone else?
Yeah.
And so basically, she was teaching his class at the Bible school too. I remember 19. And she said, will you teach the class with me? And so I said, yeah, well, pretty soon she just gave it to me. She goes, I don't know anything. You just teach it. And then there's this big war, like, this guy doesn't have a theology degree. He's teaching a Bible school class that, the principal of the school came and said, or the director of the school came and said, you can't do this. And then Mike Bickle fought for me. He said, all I've heard is fruit from you. You can do whatever you want here. And, like, why don't you travel with me and the team? And so all of a sudden I was traveling with them. And I was just healthy and happy and positive and just saying, all of you need to learn how to hear from God for yourselves. You've been in a culture where these guys, there was 5 or 7 guys who heard from God. You're all supposed to be activated. I came from the vineyard, so I was like, everybody gets to play, is John Wimber's motto. Everybody gets to do something. So I think I helped install something in the culture there that they really respected. So when it turned into a House of Prayer, I was on the senior team of the House of Prayer. And
What
just
year was
helping
this?
to plant, maybe 2008, 2009.
Okay.
And 1998, 1999.
Hey,
Wow.
I get that. I do that mistake all the time.
And so I didn't really want to be there anymore because I'm not a prayer person. I'm an action person. At that point, no one in the Kansas City movement was really into missions. There was only 2 or 3 guys that would do missions.
Yeah.
But I was going I felt like we have to see God's love change the worst areas of the world. So I would take teams, and we went to Cuba, and we went to Russia, and we went to Romania when communism was falling. We went to Czech Republic when communism was falling. We went to Germany when the walls fell. And we would just go everywhere that if there was a major disaster, we'd try and show up there. And we would just ask God to show up. We didn't even know why we were going. We weren't trained in relief. We weren't specialists, but we'd have massive favor with government, with owners of hotels, with all kinds of places, and we'd see God move. So all these Kansas City people were being culturized by, oh my gosh, my faith makes a difference, because we're stuck in a bubble where they were kind of like a Bethel, but it was only they were like one of the leading voices of the charismatic church in Kansas City at the time, but they wouldn't go out like in the church, or the house of prayer. They wouldn't go anywhere. Everyone would come to them. So I was saying my emphasis was let's go out and see God change the world. Not just the church world, not just do conferences, but let's see God change the world. So, I did stupid stuff. I ended up getting malaria a bunch of times and getting different sicknesses and a parasite that almost killed me.
Is that when you came to Africa? Came to Pemba?
No.
No,
I got malaria from South America. Really? I went to the jungles of South America several times.
How many countries have you been to by now?
I don't even know. I need to count. I haven't even.
There's an app.
I've been to hundreds of countries. I traveled 270 days a year for 10 or 12 years and the way Mike Bickle traveled was he never saw anything.
This is before family.
Before I was married.
Before children.
You would not do
before
this now.
Wife.
But Mike Bickle he'd go, if we went to Europe, he'd go to a different city every day and preach there, and you never see anything. So I'd go to 12 places in 12 days and speak 3 different places in those towns. And so, I not only went to a lot of places, but I went only I'd just see hotels and conferences. Right. Yeah. So I was trying to change that by going to a place and feeling the people and getting to know street kids and hanging out with gypsies and just trying to be present with people versus just being present with the conference. Yeah. And so I changed what I was doing with them and just said, I want to grow in God. I want to grow and see love impact. And we would see transformative things in culture. And during that time, I also joined the Sentinel group, which was George Otis Jr., who made these transformation videos. And there were 7 videos or 4 videos, I can't remember. But he would go into regions where God was transforming culture in regular society, not just churches. But Jesus was touching places. And so we did these conferences where you would come into Anderson, Indiana, or somewhere in Illinois, Rockford, Illinois, and 100% of church leaders, the mayor, governmental leaders, and most of the business leaders who were owners of businesses would meet together with our team. I was the only charismatic guy, and we would teach 7 steps of transforming your city. So I learned a lot because these transformative guys were thinking on a brilliant Yale University or Harvard, Ivy League mindset. Yeah. And they were saying we can actually transform poverty. We can with God's help. We can, United Nations is good, but we have to take it into kingdom. So we have to inject kingdom to United Nations. So we can actually change things. Mm-hmm. So I'm with Mike Bickle and the House of Prayer, which are beautiful people, but are very church-centric. And they have their mission. It's a beautiful mission. So that's not in any way to minimize what they're doing, but I have a very different calling. Yeah. And I'm going, how do we transform nations? How do we speak into what God's doing with these billionaires and these politicians, these world leaders? So the whole time I'm kind of going back and forth from the church from our little house of prayer to these incredible places. And finally, I just knew I had to leave, but I had such a love and addiction to Mike Bickle in a good way. I just love his heart. What are some of the biggest things you learned from having that time in Kansas City or being stewarded? Yeah. That's just what Mike is. He just teaches you how to be faithful and intimacy. He teaches Song of Songs. He's a football player looking guy who teaches how to have intimacy with God. He was my hero. I was this big buff kid who was just I needed a man to teach me how to love, and he just loves really well. His family, Diana and his 2 sons, he just was a good dad and he is a good husband. And I just remember watching that going, you don't get a lot of things right, but you get the best things right. You get the best things right. I couldn't stand his eschatology. I couldn't stand how we were so church-centric, but I loved his love for Jesus. There's no one like him on the whole earth still to this day. I just look at him and I go, you're in a class of your own the way you're dedicated to Jesus. And the hard thing for me is I remember when he prayed me out and he said, when I was leaving, and he goes, well, you learned who you are by being with who you're not, because the mandate was not my mandate. Prayer. Yeah, I was going to say. All of this stuff was not my calling. What is that like to walk so closely and
under someone when you have a different calling and yet you're still learning from them.
Like when I actually like movies and TV because I feel like I'm affected.
Right,
And he never watches
yeah.
them.
Exactly.
He's like, what's that movie? Bono one time contacted us when we were in England. I was with Mike in England. And he's like, oh, I forgot to give this to you on the plane. He goes, this guy wanted to meet with us. I guess he's some famous musician. He's like, he read my book, someone wanted to meet with us. And he goes, Bono? Bono? I'm like, no! Mike, I told his son, and me and his son are going,
Oh my God.
this is like our favorite musician in the world. You know, it's just funny. But Mike was totally out of touch with the world that I wanted to impact. You know, he just didn't, he's not dualistic in his theology. He just naturally doesn't like entertainment.
And yet God called you
okay.
there for a season to serve
12
in
years.
that's a long time.
12 years.
So that's...
And I would have stayed if God had, just because I loved him and I loved what he was doing so much, I probably would have stayed.
Yeah.
And probably a little codependent in that just because I loved him so much. But no, I left and it was, I think, a friend of mine, she had this statement that she was in a very conservative church that didn't agree with kind of the charismatic world. And God said, I'm keeping you here because I'm teaching you obedience, and I can bring any experience to your obedience. But if I just let you have your experiential side, you'll never learn obedience because you'll just do what you want to do, and you'll think
So true.
you'll be so powerful in
Yeah.
your own life to make decisions. And I felt like that applied to my time in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Like I learned how to really walk with God and really read the Bible. I mean, like I was in the vineyard before that where I don't know that I...
And really submit to leadership too.
Yeah, really submit.
Right.
Because you
And
were
it was
in a more
easy.
free-form thing with
Yeah.
your parents before that, and then...
And Mike made it really easy and enticing to me because I didn't
Yeah.
have all the rules that everybody had. I never signed their sacred trust thing. I never did all the stuff that they did. I just remember he just loved me really well. It was a real grace relationship.
You were under
And so,
love.
yeah,
basically,
I was
yeah.
under love and I was able to, but it wasn't my culture.
No.
And he knew that and I knew that, but we never argued about it or anything. It was just like, one time he was like, are you going to teach my eschatology? I was like, never. And he just laughed. You know,
Oh,
it
that's
wasn't
good.
like-
You could be honest.
Yeah, I was like, never. Why would I teach her? It's like the worst eschatology I've ever heard. And we just laughed about it.
That's
you know,
amazing.
Like, it wasn't like, how dare you? It was like, yeah, you know. I always joked around that he wasn't my spiritual father. He was my godfather. Because he was like, he came from a mafia background. I don't know if you know that.
No.
And so his dad was a mafia street fighter and stuff. And so he came from, like, if anybody tried to mess with me, he'd take him out. You know, like, he just was such a good guy. But it wasn't like my parents were my true spiritual parents, you know. And then after that, I've had, like, your mom has been amazing in my life and Bill and Benny Johnson. But they had more of the culture of relational love, which is different than Kansas City didn't necessarily have. For me, my experience wasn't very relational loving. Other than Mike was relational loving, but not fathering relational loving. It was more like a big brother or a coach or something, you know. But I so appreciate that because it was what it was, and I knew that I wasn't trying to put something else on it.
Yeah, so what's... That just really sparks interest in me, Shawn. What's this difference between fathering and the other more big brother coach type?
Well, and it's funny. It's a great question because when you've had really good natural parents, you know what to look for. But if you haven't had really, and there's a lot of good people that are parents, but they're not necessarily good at spiritually developing you or talent developing you or heart developing you. And so a lot of times people think because my parents are good people, I've had good parents. And it's not that they've been bad parents, but if they put the same energy into parenting as they did in all the other aspects in their life holistically, then they've been good parents. But if they are good people who they might be really good at a bit ministry, or really good at, like a lot of the Air Force guys were really good at being colonels and generals that were around, but they were terrible parents, really. They didn't ever develop their kids. They never talked about sexuality. They never talked to them about boundaries, about heart issues, about how to make a career choice, about how to they would finance stuff or they would do nice things for them, acts of service, but they didn't, holistically, they weren't in touch with the heart. They'd lost their children's hearts. So my parents, who came from that, decided to change that and be like, we're going to be your real parents. And so when I had that, it was really funny because when I went to Kansas City, there was 1,000 people that called Mike Bickle their spiritual father, not just out of honorary title, but they were like, he is my father. I'm like, no, fathers actually meet with you and help develop your heart. Mothers actually ask you how you're doing and actually nurture that place. So for me, I grew up with such good spiritual parents that when I actually spent time with Heidi, I remember Heidi and I in 2004, 5, and 6, especially because I was coming in such an identity process and ministry. And she's like, so how do you think about that? Let's talk that through for a minute. Wait a minute. And I had lost my will to kind of live in the church. I was just I was jaded and a little bit frustrated. And she's like, okay, let's talk about, you have love and you're okay with saving the world over here. but you've turned your love off over here. So how do you get your love back on over here? And that's a very motherly discussion.
Yeah, right.
Whereas if I was with somebody else who was just kind of a spiritual parent, but they're not actually parenting, they have the title, they never go there in the heart thing. They may develop skills or talents, or they may give you place or position, but that's not parenting. That's a type of that's part of parenting.
Yeah.
But that's more like leadership. Maybe it's an uncle, maybe it's an aunt, somebody who's not taking responsibility for your heart, but they're just invested in you. And that's, in the corporate world, you said, is just that those are just your leaders. That's just your your managers and your leaders.
Right.
In the Christian world, we somehow have to spiritualize those relationships in a weird way and put titles on them. And so a lot of people are like, Mama, Heidi, when it's not really their spiritual mother, but that's what they're comfortable with, because they've had rejection or they've had abandonment, so they put too much on the relationship. And I feel like if you know healthy boundaries and how to relate to people, it actually helps you get the most out of the relationship. But if you put a fantasy on it, it actually will limit you from getting something out of the relationship that you're supposed to get. So that's kind of my philosophy on that.
So I think there's going to be a parenting book somewhere down the track.
Probably.
Sounds like it.
Once we've had our kids grow up, though. I mean, our kids are only 3 and 15 months.
Need to experiment on them first.
My parents need to write one because they were amazing. My mom read Danny Silk's book, who is from Bethel. It's, what is it again, you guys?
Keep Your Love On?
No, the other one, the parenting one.
Oh, yes.
It's amazing.
Yes.
But I don't know what it's called.
I'll forget the book's name. Danny, I'm really sorry.
Sorry, Danny.
But Parenting on Purpose. I think it's called.
Loving on Purpose.
No, Loving on Purpose. I think that one's Parenting. I don't know. Anyways, we're going to... So my
Something
mom
about
read
love and parenting and purpose.
Totally. My mom read it and she's like, I'm so sorry. I feel like we failed you. I start laughing. So I'm like, hello. Like, I'm connected. I know what's in my heart. I don't violate myself. I'm not insecure. I'm not, I'm not... arrogant. I'm not all these things, and that's because you guys nurtured us. Stop it. And she's like, but she saw the new kind of tools and skills that she didn't have. And she's like, I wish I had those. And I'm like, stop it. You're amazing. And she's like, I am amazing.
Nice.
Which is sweet.
Yeah, and it's that investing in you. They invested in you. Is that the key? You think the investment and the care about what really is going on for you? Is that what your parents did?
Yeah, and I think they chose to be present, and they chose to have conversations, and they chose to, instead of what their parents didn't do, is they didn't ask them about their sexuality. They didn't ask them about how they were doing, self-management in their life. They didn't talk to them about I was dreaming all the time, so I was like, how I want to be an astronaut. My dad's like, okay, let's go to astronaut camp. I want to be with this, and he's always trying to develop those dreams, but also saying, wait, who are you? Now there's 25 dreams. Oops, sorry. Which one?
Right.
Yep.
Who do you really? I keep hearing writing in you, and I keep hearing inspiration in you, and I keep hearing creative arts in you, but I don't. All these other dreams feel a little bit too just fun. So let's try them on a little bit. But let's come back to what's core. And so that kind of stuff, none of my friends' parents did that with them.
Wow.
So I just feel like they were just good at pointing out who I am and identity stuff.
Man, your parents sound like legends. I mean, they're
so sweet.
Because of the whole the revival they carried as well, being outside of the church almost. I mean, they were in, not that they wanted to be, but just what they stewarded.
He chose his career, so
and then raised you up, and then the healing, and then the looking and the journey of faith they went on.
Well, it's interesting because when I moved to Kansas City, and they moved there right after me because they just wanted to be a part of my sister moved there too. And so we moved there, and my sister and I did really well because the young adult type thing was really strong there. My parents got there, they were like, wow, the people who are in our age group in the 50s and 60s feel like they don't have a lot of identity, and they're looking for this church to meet all their spiritual needs. Yeah. And we don't feel healthy, so we're going to go to another church, but we're going to still live in Kansas City. And we really love Mike Bickle, but the church for our age group feels a little dysfunctional. Just the fact that they could do that without massive judgment, just an assessment of it's just not healthy for us, but let's go for it.
Yeah.
I loved watching that model of going, wow, you guys are... You're not judging. It's a critical analysis, but without a critical spirit. Mm-hmm. It's they did what was healthy for them. That speaks to me volumes of people who can be, who can make decisions based on what's healthy for you without being against everything around you.
That is so cool.
And they went to all the conferences. They volunteered on all the teams, but they just didn't call it home. They went to another church. So it was just great.
Yeah.
There's something I want to touch on. You obviously fill a lot of roles. There's a lot of different things that you do, but you're widely known as a prophet. That's what people think of Shawn. And lately, there's been a huge increase in that, in specific words that you call out. And Was there a moment when that shifted for you? Can you talk a little bit about that journey?
It's a fun moment because it was about 3 years ago, and I was on a trip, and I was exhausted with the prophetic. I felt like the prophetic culture, not prophecy itself, the being known as a prophetic person or being around other prophetic people, probably about 50% of them were going through real insecure spots, and there's a lot of like identity issues in prophetic ministries. Not all of them. There's some great ones, but I was around a lot of identity issue stuff. So I was moving away from doing prophetic conferences and just doing like leadership and doing transformation or justice stuff and just, living life.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And I was exhausted. So I remember telling Cherie, I'm not going to do prophetic conferences anymore or anything with the prophetic. I'm just going to let the prophetic will be a gift set that we use because we love Jesus. And I'm exhausted with these people. I don't want to ever write into this. I don't want to be known as this. I don't want to be a prophet in a movement. I'm done. I'm just tired of this. The eccentricity.
That is hilarious.
So I had one more trip that was prophetic. That was scheduled, and it was for this church that I prophesied exactly where their building would be behind Albertsons that would be condemned, that if they would go find out where it was at and ask the city, they would get it for cheap or pennies on a dollar or free. And it happened. So they had asked me 2 years later to come in and christen it. It was done. They rebuilt the whole thing. I didn't want to go. Like at the last minute, Cherie was going to go with me. I was getting back from Korea, and I was supposed to go straight there, and I'm like, this causes me anxiety internally. This is who I don't want to be anymore. I don't like this world. I don't like this realm for me. There's a million people who want this. They can have it,
Wow, and, that is so
then
funny,
she got
Shawn.
sick, and she couldn't come. So I called her. I'm like, I don't want to do this alone. And I only had 2 sessions with them. It was in Idaho. And so the first night, I did terrible, you guys. Like, my heart wasn't present. I was like, what am I doing here? There's a million people who'd want to be a prophet for this church. I don't want to be a prophet for this church. This is just, or anybody else. I was exhausted. I was burned out. I was a little jaded and confused. I just needed to detox and some stuff, too, from just that role.
Yeah.
But I was great in other areas of ministry. My heart was alive. So I was like, okay, my heart's dead here, so I'm going to focus on what's alive.
Right.
And we'd gone through a lot at the church. Not because of our church, Expression 58, but we'd gone through a lot. My wife's father had died. We had a man, you guys know, Jim died in the church. We had a man die in the church. We had so many hard things happen. So we were in that moment of just hardship.
Yeah.
So I have a visitation that night. It was the worst meeting I ever did, and I was complaining to God and said, this was so stupid. Like, this was so hard. Why did you allow me to be in this position? I would judge me if I were you. Like, I was terrible. My heart wasn't connected or present. I should never be prophetic again. Like, this is terrible. Like, there's people who want this. Why? And I'm complaining. And I hear him laugh in this ear. I hear him laugh internally.
God.
Loudly. Laughing at me. And I go, I'm either going crazy or God's speaking to me. I'd never heard this like this before. And he said, I'm going to do 12 things in your life. And gives me 12 personal promises that are so big. And I'm sitting there listening to him. And after it was done, it's quiet for a while. And this is what comes out of me. I go, I'm so sorry. I don't believe you.
Wow.
I said,
All right.
I'm so sorry. They're too big. And you've spoken to me. And I'm either in a delusional moment or this is all real. And I'm so sorry, God. I just can't believe it. Why didn't you tell someone else? Why did you tell me? I mean, this is like stupid to believe in myself. It's totally arrogant, like these kinds of things. And they're actually not that far off of what I was already aiming at, but it was just a more upgraded vision than I had for myself. And he laughs again. And he said, I told you because I love you. And tomorrow I'm going to speak through you in a way that's going to confirm that these 12 things are real because you're going to hear me in a way for other people and love them through the prophetic in a way that you won't be able to deny what I told you tonight.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, this is awesome. Okay. So the next day I go to Starbucks before the meeting. I was actually late to the meeting without knowing it. So I go to Starbucks and I order a drink, and it's in a big like grocery store. And so I look over the bakery department and I hear the voice again. Just the voice of love. It's like the father's voice. And he says, Diane works in the bakery. She lost her daughter 2 years ago, but she saw her in heaven. She had a visitation, and she wrote a book about it. And I want you to talk to her about how she's going to heal grief out of Christians. I'm like, this is awesome. And I ran over to talk to her about Allison, her daughter, who died. And I had all this information. There's this 18-year-old kid working in the bakery, and I go, where's Diane? Is Diane here? And he goes, Diane? There's no Diane here. And I go, no, Diane, who works in the bakery. He's like, I'm sorry, man. There's no Diane. I'm like, I'm going crazy. I need a psychiatric evaluation. Like, I heard this so clearly.
Wow.
All those 12 things are not God, and this is not God. And I was depressed. I don't ever get depressed. I was so depressed. And I go to the meeting. When I got there, they're like, oh, good, you're here. Come on, get up on stage. Like, immediately. So I had no time to process. I'm like,
Yeah.
I think I need to check into a hospital. I think I'm hearing voices,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. And so I get up on the stage.
Oh my goodness.
And I processed my heart verbally because I was so undone. I go, you guys, I'm so sorry, I'm in a really hard place because I prophesied. I went to the bakery and of this grocery store, and I thought there was a Diane who worked there who has a daughter who died 2 years ago. And as I'm saying, the pastor goes, there's a Diane. She runs the bakery. She's my best friend. She just had to go help these people whose son died. And so she hasn't been here, but Diane runs it. Like, no, the grocery store right down there. No, what are you talking about? She goes, yeah. Did she lose her daughter Allison 2 years ago? And like a bunch of people start crying because like they were so in touch with it, and she was real. That kid just didn't know her, and he was like a temp or new or something.
Oh,
and I'm
my
like,
goodness!
Yes,
So
and I'm
funny.
freaking out. Then I'm like, going, wait a minute, if Diane's real,
Goodness.
all that's right. And then I processed over 4 other people with that kind of detail of word of knowledge of just their past, their present, and for me, it made me go, not only am I not crazy, but God actually believes these 12 things about me, and He's actually asked me to have bigger faith. And I just went, I remember at the end I was like, oh my God, you're so good. I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do. And I was flying home that day and I told Cherie. It took me years before I tell her the 12 things. Because I was like, I just want to build arrogance in this. I just don't want to. She's like, you need to trust Jesus that He told you those, and you're not going to build arrogance around Him. You just need to trust Him. And so, but it took me a while before I tell her. And she's like laughing when I told her. She's like, I believe all of that. Like, what's your problem? But what I thought was a one-hit wonder, like it was just to confirm, it just kept happening. And God said, I birthed your prophetic ministry out of my love for you. Not out of a gifting for the church, not to tell everybody where they're supposed to go, or not to be directional. I birthed it because I wanted you as a son to know Ephesians 3:20, beyond what you could hope or imagine, I have for your life, and I love you. Wow. And so that's how it got birthed.
That's so beautiful.
In this season of it.
Hey,
Recently.
So, yeah, Azusa, we got to talk about Azusa?
Azusa?
Come on.
What?
We're on the same page.
A lot of people probably saw you prophesy over specific people at Azusa now. It was incredible. It was such a powerful moment. Can you talk a little bit about that? And also, obviously, when you're working at that level of gifting and you're stepping out that much, there's a lot of backlash that happens. And I know that you've commented on that a bit, but can you talk a little bit about that journey? What is that like to get so many people who doubt what you're
Well, the good thing
doing?
was I had, because of being a part of the Kansas City movement, I had a lot of persecution because we had like reports and whole radio shows that were dedicated against us and the whole thing. So I experienced that much, like a lot of persecution in the past. So it's not that triggering to me at all. It's like it's the only time that I comment on it this time is because we have social media now. So I'll post a picture of my daughters, and then I'll get somebody who says, "I hope you die so someone else can father them in righteousness because you're evil." Like we'll have that level of evilness come across, and it's Christian groups who believe they're doing something right and persecuting us. I mean, this has happened on 50 pictures, on like 25 statements I've made, like you're a heretic and your kids are, your kids are gonna be lucky if they live to 18, that kind of stuff. Like, so as soon as they attacked on that level, that was weird. I just didn't know that existed. I mean, when radio shows come against your ministry or whatever, that was like almost exciting. Like, wow, they don't believe in us, cool. Yeah. But when people are like speaking curses against your family who are coming from a Christian background, you're just like, wow, how can you even, that's not even weird. Remotely, but it's those same people who stand with signs that says God curses all homosexuals and wants them all to die type. It's that kind of hatred, but it happens on social media too. And I've always had a little bit of that, but I've never had it on, we banned 1,000 people's accounts against us. Like on just Facebook alone, that doesn't include Instagram or Twitter or whatever. I just had no idea there was that many people. And it's funny because they really look outwardly, they look as hateful as they do inwardly, like their eyes, their expressions. That was new for me. Okay, so that's all I'll say about that. Like, it's not, no one's persecuting us that we care about. Yeah. It's so beautiful. Like, we have complete open access to the church and to the world in a beautiful way.
And you're under authority.
It's not affecting us at all. It's
you have major leaders access to your life, don't you?
I mean,
so you don't feel like
we have full. I mean, we're just in the best season we've ever been in. But Azusa, what was crazy about Azusa is that I had a word from Paul Cain, who did this kind of ministry of words of knowledge and prophecy together back in the 50s, and then reemerged in the 80s and did it again for about 15 years. And it was so profound to watch him because he would say something like your middle name and your mom's maiden name, and then give you a word. He would ground you by word of knowledge to believe that God was like present with you in that moment. All of a sudden, you're like, the God of all the universe is talking to me and pointing me out. And then all of a sudden, prophecy would come that you could just, your faith would explode for.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that, and Paul prayed for me at one point said, I'm a token to a generation, and there's not many like me, but when this happens with you, implying that I was going to prophesy the same way, you will be a bridge to a generation, and everyone will look at what you're doing and run across your faith and prophesy that way too.
Come on.
So Azusa to me was the beginning of that like bridge.
Yep.
Because I prophesied, and I love how we were in this big room, and Eric Johnson, Bill Johnson's son from Bethel, put it best. All of a sudden, it became a living room. 65,000 people gathered, plus millions of people online, and it became a living room where all of a sudden we're all on each other's team, we're on each other's family.
Small group at the Coliseum.
Oh, it felt like a small group. Like all of a sudden, it's like, hey, you over there. They're all the way across, but everyone's just on their team. What's God going to say? I was on their team. I was like,
totally
I didn't
like
know.
that.
And I almost like didn't do it because I was, for whatever reason, was just feeling really nervous and really weird about it. I was like, how do you do prophecy on this level? Is it going to distract from what God's doing? Like, I don't know how this all works. I've never seen anyone give words in front of 65,000 people that are for an individual. How will we even find out where they are? Like, I asked the team 10 times beforehand, Lou, help me out. What do I do? So I asked Paul on the stage that day, you've done this. Yeah, you've done this in stadiums. What do I do? I have this name, and this is what I'm going to tell them. What do I do? He goes, just ask them to wave their hands like this, because that's how we used to do it. And I was like, okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
Word of wisdom from
totally.
the prophet,
Totally.
man.
So even him, just have him,
Something super practical.
Super practical, and it was just so fun. But it became a moment where I felt like people, the words knows cause all of us to feel like we see God's affection for somebody. He knows when we were born because he thought of us for millions of years before we were ever created. He loves our marriages more than he do, so he knows our anniversaries. He knows our social security numbers because he knows, like our mark in this generation in our country. He knows our secret bank account numbers because he cares about our finances more than we do. So I get these kinds of information, like
literally bank account numbers.
Oh, I've gotten bank account numbers. I got one bank account number that was 27 numbers, characteristics, and letters, and set it all to a billionaire. And it was his most private bank account that only him and his banker knew, and his wife didn't even know. And he had to tell his wife right there, "I've hidden a bank account from you." And he wasn't a believer, and he said, "And I know God's real now because that's the only thing I would believe." I mean, that kind of stuff. Like, I'm going A1 hashtag pound heart, like that kind of stuff, like crazy stuff.
So you literally hearing
it? I saw it all in a row, and I just said
so
it.
You
and I
saw
felt
a
like
visual
robot.
picture.
Yeah, just one at a time. So like for me, a lot of the people, I'll see like a word association, but there's one of the Snyders. They were the first couple that I prophesied over who I've talked to since. They're from YWAM, moving to Oregon, the whole thing.
The one that the documentary's made about?
Yeah, so there's a mini documentary, 12 minutes.
Yeah.
They can see it on my Facebook, on my public Facebook.
Yeah, I've watched it. It's amazing.
Main video that you'll see up there. I don't know where it is. John Snyder's son made the documentary.
Yeah, it's a documentary about Shawn at Azusa.
Yeah, so it's like just
one knowledge
just for their family and how it affected them. And there's a new one we're going to put on very soon, so it'll be on by the time the podcast is up, where I'm prophesying, and I say a nun in something like Green Meadows or whatever, and I'm seeing you right now like you're a nun in Meadows, and it ended up being this street name, and there's a girl watching on Periscope, and her name was Heather Nunn, and she's like screaming at the guy who's holding the Periscope up. She's going, it's me. He looks and he goes, there's a girl right here, because we couldn't find her in the meeting. There's a girl, her name's Heather Nunn. That's her street address. She's lived at for 13 years, whatever. Wow. And so she made a little mini documentary too of what happened, because I gave the date her brother died and how she's taken on the mantle. He was a worship leader to do these huge worship events in San Diego, and how God's going to bless her and doing this as a prototype for her life. And so like those kinds of things have happened, and people are seeing God outside of a huge box, that he knows us. He knew us before we were formed. And when you feel that, like especially unsaved people, because I do it with unsaved people all the time. If I even just give a birthday, it's like it's a mixture between a magic show and like a God glory moment, because they're like, how do you know my birthday? How did you know that? And I'm like, not only do I know that, but Dayton, Ohio. And they're like, that's where I'm from. I was born. How do you know that? And you're an actor. They're freaking out because I'm having a spiritual moment with Jesus or with God. Can I share some things with you?
When that happens, and you're saying that person's unsaved, they don't even know what the prophetic means. Say that
or what it is.
Say their only grid for that is like a psychic or something. How do you explain to them what's the difference between a fortune teller being a psychic or
I haven't had to explain it all. Like if I'm just saying, hey, I'm learning how to hear from God, which I usually say even 24 years into this, but God made you and he has something to tell you. You don't have to even explain it. They're not comparing me to a psychic or an astrologer most of the time. They're just like, what? And if it's real and it has real information, I've had people who are like, I don't know if I believe you. I'm like, that's okay. That's totally fine. But they're like, oh, this is incredible. One of the guys who didn't believe me, he's like, went home and told his wife about it. And she's like, I need to talk to this guy. So I had given him my phone number. This is an unsaved businessman. And so all of a sudden I get this phone number. I wasn't going to answer it. I felt like God said, answer it. And I answer it. It's this woman who I'd met her husband in the airport. She's like, you need to tell me what you told my husband. Can you please tell me? We don't know. Like, we're spiritual, but we don't know God. Like, we don't know what you're doing. So I told her the whole thing. She's
Phone
like,
evangelism.
She's like, God, I knew this was important. She goes, I just feel so in touch with like God's thoughts right now.
No. Wow.
And God's heart right now. Like, she's saying back to me what Christians would normally say. So I feel like we're all wired for God.
Yeah, exactly.
And this proves it most, because whether it's someone in Ecuador or someone in the slums or whatever, we've had the same response everywhere.
Wow.
Because it's the Spirit's on it.
Yeah, God,
So
he
people
fills
feel that.
in the gaps relationally.
Yeah.
Like
It
it's his
resonates-
presence. It's
it
not just a
resonates with their
word.
spirit.
Yeah.
And
So
so
it's
they-
like you have the Holy Spirit's like filling all the gaps for them in their spirit of what they. And it may not be head knowledge, but it's spiritual knowledge.
Wow.
So it's been cool so far. I haven't had any persecution from the world at all. None.
Yeah.
That's
and you definitely
interesting.
Yeah.
From Christians.
And it's not even. I haven't had any persecution from any Christians I care about.
Yeah.
So far, I mean, like even the most conservative evangelicals, the
Wow.
Catholics, they love me. Like I've had persecution from people who are like cult watcher groups, or people who are like, we need to police the Christianity because we're the voice. That kind of.
Yeah.
But those people, like Jesus fought with them in his generation. I don't care.
Yeah.
They're easy.
That's
The battle's
incredible.
easy. It's not about love for them.
You recently posted, I heard something about, you took a trip to Dallas and you made a comment about the difference between relying on your process with God and relying on God. Is that right?
Sort of.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you elaborate
So-
on that a little bit?
Well, the first night I got there, and I honestly I hadn't really prayed up for the trip. I was really busy, and so I just my heart was present. I did pray, but I didn't usually I try and set aside, if I know I'm going to do a time with the church, I'll pray for a couple hours beforehand, or sometimes a couple hours over a couple different weeks.
Or if you're stuck in
And-
traffic.
or if
on
I'm
the,
stuck in
on the
traffic
way to
all
our
the time.
artist boot
And
camp
that
last
happens
year.
all the time.
You got crazy
That
words
was
for our
crazy. So
students.
I prayed for them, and I like 20
you
minutes
often hear
before.
things ahead of time.
Yeah, I try to, because I think it
and
makes
write them on the
more-
iPhone.
I always write them on the iPhone, because I use my iPhone for everything, all my notes and my
Yeah.
So I did that 15 minutes beforehand, and or 20 minutes beforehand. And I wrote down a bunch of stuff. And when I got there, I set up. I gave my message. And the message was great. Talked about creative genius, and I've talked about that expression before. But then I shared. I tried a word of knowledge, like, oh, that is a couple, but they're not here. I'm like, thank God, Then I did 4 more or 5 more, and none of the people were there or real. And I went, what's going on, God? Like, maybe this will come back up. Maybe it's for somewhere else. But the odds are I missed it. So I was like, what? Why? And I felt like, okay, I'm connecting you the same way I've been connecting to you all the time, just less amount of time I gave you in advance. So what's going on? And I just felt like he was saying, don't be so reliant on what's working all the time. Like, you didn't spend any real connected time in your heart with me. You just try to get words for people. Like, come and connect to me about Dallas and these people, that you're in this amazing church with these amazing people in this amazing city, and you don't even know what's on my heart for Dallas, let alone this church, let alone these people. And you didn't even spend time with me to really know my heart. So it wasn't a rebuke at all. It was like an invitation to say, don't just rely on me for words or for the ministry appointment. Rely on me to know me in this
Yeah.
land. So I felt like he was just kind of adjusting me, and I felt like I had got too familiar with my process. So he was saying, this is I want to do things differently, and you have faith for this now, and I want to go beyond what you have faith for.
Wow.
And you're too reliant now. So change. Wow. And it was a gift, because I
Yeah,
knew you're
absolutely.
about to do things that I can't even imagine, and this is what I couldn't imagine now that I'm living in, and you're taking me past that. And so I had this what could have been an epic failure, but it was actually one of the biggest gifts. Then I ministered again on in the prophetic on Sunday morning. It was awesome, and then Sunday night. Everybody I called out wasn't in the meeting, but they were part of the church. And I called them out by weird information. So it wasn't just their name, but it'd be their name and a weird business name that they hadn't told me when they're starting, or their name or whatever. And then we called them all. So it was 5 people in a row. I was like, God, why don't you want to talk to people in the meeting who made the effort to come here? You're like, what's going on? I don't understand this. And he said, I actually want to give this church a corporate word. I want to actually show them how they're a movement, not just a local church, and how if they had everybody who belonged to this church meeting at one point, it'd be way too big for this room, and they know that. But I'm about to expand them, and I'm going to speak their influence out as they go. They need to go. And so it was this whole message, and I was like, oh, wow, I wouldn't even thought of this as being a prophetic corporate experience because I was just in the moment of the words. And it was just beautiful. It was like beautiful to where God spoke to them on multi-level, you know, and the people I called out, who I did call on the phone, are some of their favorite people. So they were so excited. They were like, this is awesome, you know.
Do you still get nervous ever?
All the time.
I mean, it's crazy stuff.
Azusa,
You're saying
I
really
can tell you were
I
nervous
was
at
dying at
Azusa.
Azusa.
I know. And you spoke, and you disclosed that publicly, which was great.
Yeah.
That's one of the best ways to deal with it, actually.
I get just as
learned in
nervous
acting.
one-on-one with somebody I don't have context for. If I know you, I don't get nervous.
Mm.
But if I don't know you, I'm like, if it's a waitress or a Starbucks person or a flight attendant or whatever, you know, I was behind a counter and this this lady at the ticket agency was there, and I was trying to change my ticket to go forward. And all of a sudden I looked at her and I go, is your husband okay? And she's like, he's really sick at home right now. He's really sick. And I go, can I pray for him? She's like, I'm a Christian. Yeah, I'd love that. And she goes, do you believe in healing? And I go, yeah. And she goes, we're praying. We just found out that there's healing. We didn't know that as Christians. I'm like, we're totally praying. And I told her like 3 stories of healing. I go, is his name Jim? She's like, yes. And she just starts bawling. So we had to go over. There's a huge line. We had to go over. Her manager came over and he's like, is everything okay? And I said, you know, her husband's sick. I'm a pastor. I'm praying for her. Can we just have this moment? He goes, absolutely. I'm a Christian too. I'll take over. So he took over her thing. So I'm praying for her, and I'm like, we're having this moment, and they're on this journey still of healing, but he's had some breakthrough. He should have died by now. And this is now 8 or 10 months later. He's still alive and he's recovering, but he still needs the full miracle. But I remember just sitting there, and then afterwards, not only did I get my ticket changed, I got upgraded to first class. There's no agenda, but there was no room on the plane, but she found an upgraded seat. She gave me that. Her manager approved of it. They were like, what are you doing? And then since then, she's helped me a couple times on different flights to do different things. She's like, I owe you. Like, I understand healing. I've been introduced to all these amazing resources through your life.
Wow.
And it just created relationship and loyalty both ways, like where there's just like real life. I mean, I have flight attendants all over the place.
Shawn, how does that make you feel?
I love.
How does
like,
that
their
make you
family.
feel when stuff like that happens?
Like, Jesus is awesome. Like, he's so in love with everybody, right? I mean,
It's so beautiful.
I just
breaks
love
down barriers really quickly.
it. Yeah, they're my family. Like,
Yeah.
my family's everywhere. Like, I'm so
It
homesick.
like skips a lot of steps, I feel like.
Totally.
To where they're just ready to hear what the Lord says.
Yeah, what would normally
he's
take
saying.
like 20 conversations. You could do alpha group, which I fully believe in, with somebody who's like on their search or journey, and do that. Or sometimes you get a prophetic moment that bypasses what would take a whole alpha group course, which is still invaluable.
Yeah.
It happens in 10 seconds, or 25 counseling appointments in 1 minute. You know,
Wow.
I love it.
That's so
So
awesome.
good. Shawn, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for
coming
bringing
in.
me.
It's like just so encouraging
It's
to
been
hear your
amazing.
journey and to hear all the story about your parents and your teenage years, which were pretty eventful.
Yeah, epic.
But we just got a
epic
couple of questions to finish with. What is your favorite movie?
That's probably a hard one, but
No, it's actually easier. Gladiator.
Steven?
I love Gladiator. It's my favorite
Yes.
still. I haven't watched it in a
Oh,
long
my
time,
goodness.
but it's just impacted me so much.
I
I love that movie. Russell Crowe. He's just Cinderella Man, Gladiators. He's in some good movies.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
but yeah, Gladiators.
My current favorite I can't say because people would judge me on the.
Oh, that makes me want to know.
It might rhyme with Bedpool.
Oh yeah, you might
Swimming
get some
pool?
flag for that one.
I
yeah.
love superhero movies.
That's
so I love
amazing. What do you do for fun?
that. Video games.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang out with my kids and play video games. My 3-year-old and 15-month-old love Super Mario.
Nice.
So we've been playing
So
that.
are we talking PlayStation or Xbox? Or is there another
All
one
of
in the
them.
player? All of them?
I love everything.
Amazing.
I'm a video game player. I'm like, I don't sacrifice anything for it. It's just my hobby. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'm so social that I need to get
That's
on
a
video
good
games
way
and
to
not play with
unwind.
anybody.
Can you
Yeah.
be an
So-
Apple guy
No, I hate Apple.
and be a video
No,
junkie?
you can't.
So they're
No.
mutually exclusive, are
No,
they?
Did you
there's
just
Apple
say you
games.
hate
I hate
Apple?
Apple for video games.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, for video games.
All
No,
right.
Apple is not a game
So forget
machine.
about it if you're
It's
Apple.
only good for video and audio. It's not good for anything else. I mean,
Right.
like, I'm a Microsoft person for any office or any, like,
Gaming.
productivity or gaming.
Yeah.
My
This is
husband's
so
into
different.
virtual reality right now,
Oh, isn't it
and
cool?
you can't do it with the iPhone
No, you
yet.
can't.
Yeah, so
Well, you can. You can do Google Glasses. It's $15 and you can watch all the YouTube Google movies. And yeah, so you can $15.
it's a whole
Google
new
Glasses.
world.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Now, also, next one.
A couple questions borrowed from the actor studio.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite sound? It's kind of a tough one sometimes.
I have a favorite sound. Hartley's singing She's 15 months old, and she loves Minions. And they start out in the beginning going ba 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 ba. They're doing the introduction, and she sings that every morning pretty perfectly. So that's my favorite sound.
That's actually that's an easier one for parents. I feel like.
Yeah, because we have our kids.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
If you were to have another profession, what would it be?
Being a socialite like Kim Kardashian or one of those guys who is famous for no reason. And just gets to show up at all the best parties in the world.
Yes.
I kind of do that anyway.
I'd get paid so much money.
Yeah, I don't get paid so much money, but I get to go to some of the most amazing events in the world. So I kind of do half of that, but I'd like to have the payment too.
Amazing.
Now, this is really opposite to that one.
Okay.
When you get to the pearly gates, what would you love to hear God say about Shawn Bolz when it's all said and done?
You truly are one of my favorite human beings I ever created.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I'm going to get in there and be like, I am like John, right? Like, my generation, like
No
John.
big deal.
And he'll be like, yes.
I'm your favorite.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Shawn, thank you. You're so busy. Your
Thank
schedule's
you.
like pretty crazy.
Yes.
So yeah, we really appreciate you coming in, and
It's my privilege.
it
Love
was
being with you
awesome.
guys.
Yeah.
Always.
Thank you for listening. If you have any comments or questions for future guests, feel free to leave them on the comment section on our YouTube channel. And thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, guys. God bless. This podcast is presented by Iris Global. For more information or to support the work of Iris Global, please visit us online at irisglobal.org.